Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first Council on Competitiveness Competing in the Next Economy conversation, presented by Lockheed Martin. We're honored to have with us launching this first conversation, where we'll be focusing on sustainability and the pursuit of innovation with purpose, 5 incredible leaders. Dr. Leo Mackay Jr., the Senior Vice President for Ethics and Enterprise Assurance, and the Chief Sustainability Officer at Lockheed Martin Corporation. Mr. Joe Goodwin, Strategic Initiatives Executive and Advisor to the Chairman of Bank of America. Dr. Karl Mueller, the Chief Science and Technology Officer for Physical and Computational Sciences at the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. Dr. Al Pisano, the Dean of Engineering at the University of California, San Diego, and the Walter J. Zabel Endowed Chair for Engineering. And my President and CEO, the Honorable Deborah Wince-Smith of the Council on Competitiveness. And my name is Chad Evans. I'm the Executive Vice President of the Council, and I have the honor of moderating today's conversation. But first, Deborah, I'd like to turn to you for some framing remarks, putting into context today's chat.
Thank you, Chad, and let me say good afternoon to everyone who's joining us today for this first in a series of very exciting conversations to build on the work and promise of the Council's flagship National Commission on Innovation and Competitiveness Frontiers and our groundbreaking report, Competing in the Next Economy, the New Age of Innovation. I want to thank you, Chad, for your leadership in co-designing this first seminar that's going to be very exciting today with our long-standing corporate member and strategic partner in the Council, Lockheed Martin Corporation, who has made so many contributions to creating the Council's policy agenda over many years, helping forge public-private partnerships, and really bringing to the forefront of the national debate these critical issues that are spanning the spectrum of advanced technology, the revitalization and revolutions underway in advanced manufacturing and its intersection with the energy transformation, and how together we can harness the talent, the technology, the innovation, and the infrastructure to really move forward to create a sustainable world, and certainly a sustainable world in terms of how businesses are not only designing their products and delivering their services, but how they're responding to the concerns and the needs of their customers, their clients, and the world at large to take us into a new world of sustainable, inclusive growth and prosperity. The Council on Competitiveness, now almost 35 years old, has been focused throughout its history on looking at these over the horizon frontier issues that will shape and determine our nation's productivity, our ability to grow our economy, and most importantly, to deliver a high standard of living to all of our citizens as our great corporations compete in the global economy and deliver value to citizens around the world. I want to thank very much Dr. Leo Mackay and his outstanding team of colleagues at Lockheed Martin for really selecting and designing this topic to launch our seminars, Competing in the Next Economy. And the title itself, I think, is very inspiring, Pursuing Innovation with Purpose. The sustainability imperative is one that's being recognized around the world, and it's one that really is not only creating competitive advantage, but it's an imperative for all businesses, for cities, for regions, and for countries to really move to the forefront. We are very excited at the Council that the work we've done over the last really 10 years coming out of our National Innovation Initiative back in 2004 recognized sustainability as a frontier issue that really had to come to the center for. And I like to share the concept back then that it was commonplace to look at manufacturing as dirty, dumb, dangerous, and disappearing. But we know today that manufacturing and production are smart, they're sustainable, they are safe, and it is surging. So sustainability, again, and how we're going to navigate to a low carbon, dematerialized world is at the heart of the agenda for competitiveness, productivity, and very importantly, national security. Whether it's looking at the technology innovations we're going to talk about today, and very importantly, the new emergent metrics and standards that are being driven by business leaders, such as the new chairman of the Council on Competitiveness, Mr. Brian Moynihan, the chairman and CEO of Bank of America, we're seeing that the financial industry is really at the forefront also of driving the sustainability agenda that is being implemented across all industrial spectrums, as well as being developed through the work of our national labs and the tremendous research and also talent development at our universities. So I know we're going to have a great conversation today. And again, thank all of our wonderful panelists for being with us today, who really represent the innovation and sustainability enterprise across the sectors of our economy.
Thank you, Deborah. I think as we heard Deborah say, the private and public sectors are really moving forward quickly and aggressively to set and measure critical environmental, social, and governance practices, launching new reports and benchmarks that are really paving the way to a more sustainable, innovative future. You know, some 90% of US companies now issue corporate sustainability reports outlining those ESG principles. Now that compares to just 20% a decade ago. And all of this is taking place in the context of an American public that is overwhelmingly expressing concern about the environment, with 6 in 10 Americans stating that global climate change is a major threat to this country. That's up from 44% in 2009. And just over a week ago, a major chemicals giant faced shareholder revolt at its annual meeting, with more than 80% of its investors calling for management to do things like disclose how much plastic the company releases in the environment each year, to assess annually the effectiveness of that company's pollution policies, and to publish data about diversity of its employees. These were all issues that management had recommended shareholders to actually reject. But, and here's a big caveat, coupled with these dramatic transformations in popular opinion is a lack of a common metric and processes for measuring or demonstrating the results in the broad sustainability space. As Deborah mentioned, this webinar is part of our Council's National Commission on Innovation and Competitiveness Frontiers. We'll explore a range of issues in this space to guide us toward an understanding of the current play in sustainability and to suggest some concrete steps to advance policies and actions to drive greater sustainability. And Leo, if you don't mind, I'd really like to start with you. You know, both CDP and the Dow Jones and Sustainability World Index have given Lockheed Martin their highest marks for sustainability, for leading on environmental transparency and climate performance, and for providing capital markets with access to very detailed corporate sustainability performance. And these recognitions really stem from the work of you and your team and what you do every day, and that you've recently codified in your latest ambitious report, Propelled by Principle, in which you outline the company's economic and social impacts. The report's notable, I think, because not only do you detail some attainments since 2015, you also lay out a new ambitious 2025 management plan. Leo, as Lockheed's Chief Sustainability Officer, I hope maybe could you reflect on this journey of sustainability and what kind of recommendations would you make to encourage more companies, universities, labs, and communities to think about sustainability in more systematic ways?
Chad, thanks for your question. And I'll talk about our report a little bit, but it's a great question you ask about, you know, how to go forward. And we have a very decided outlook on that. You know, our report released last month was a milestone for us because we, as you mentioned, we sunset our, we called our Sustainability Management Plan 2020 and launched our Sustainability Management Plan 2025, as well as a program we call Go Green 2030. And there are a couple dozen goals that are linked to 14 core issues. To coincide with these 5-year programs, we do a rigorous materiality assessment, which sees us consult with our stakeholders in government, our investor community, internationally, even our competimates, as we call them, people that we compete with, but also supply each other on our programs. It really is a team sport to get a holistic view of what's material to all of our stakeholders before we set a set of objectives and then set our plan. And so I won't try to go over a lot of the detail. I will commend the report to you. It's available online. One of the other things, and you mentioned this as well, you and Deborah did a great job of talking about where we are in sustainability. Reporting and metrics and reporting, and also the issue of commensurability, which is the ability to compare one company to another. And investors told us, we tried to listen very carefully, that SASB and TCFD were the preferred formats. And so this is the first report where we reported in those two formats and not in GRI. We have a lot of great things to talk about. Had a 38% reduction in carbon emissions from a 2010 baseline. We also were able to chalk up over the 5 years $4 billion in product sales annually that are directly and measurably linked to benefits to energy and advanced infrastructure resiliency. You mentioned the A's and CDP, and we're logging our 7th year on the Dow Jones World Index, 8th year on the North American Index. And then one of my favorites is Forbes has something they call the Just 100. And we were a deemed just by Forbes company. And I particularly like that for our company. But what you talked about is, how to set a framework for thinking about this. And at Lockheed Martin, one of the things we do is we link our sustainability with risk management. In fact, we have a single director who handles both areas, the enterprise risk management, as well as our sustainability office. And that executive in turn reports to me, and we link that effort to other aspects of risk management, including internal audit and our our environmental safety and health, our ESH folks. We juxtapose the S and the H, so we call it ESH here and not EHS. And so we have an integrated assurance model where the totality of the effort is integrated. It has a common senior reporting official, which is me, and I bring that perspective into our C-suite. And so it is a perspective that's one of many perspectives. The other thing we've done, in addition to thinking about sustainability and risk management terms, is we have integrated it into the core business processes of the company. In that the ELT I mentioned, the executive leadership team, which is roughly the chief executive and their direct reports, are the custodians and the governing body for our sustainability program. And the program is statused formally to that group twice a year. They in turn have named principal deputies to them that form a sustainability leadership council that we work with even more closely to oversee and govern the company. And so if you look at our proxy, we spend a good deal of time outlining this in the context of our enterprise risk management and how we have really, embedded sustainability into the company. So it's a core aspect of the way we manage the company, and the same group that manages the profit and loss of the company manages and oversees the sustainability program. So I think that's the answer to the second part of your question about the unique perspective. Actually, I would hope it isn't unique. I'd like to see that, that promulgated across industry and not just manufacturing industry, to integrate sustainability into the business planning and the core considerations of profit and loss of the company.
Well, Leo, you're resonating. I can see Deborah nodding her head, because a lot of what you described links back to some work. And Deborah, I'll come to you in a moment to talk about some of our work on resilience, and not only how you embed things like resilience and now sustainability into the core DNA of a company and really elevating it to the C-suite. But obviously, of course, you mentioned metrics. But Joe, I wonder if I could turn to you first, and then I'll come back to Deborah. What's your reaction to what you heard from Leo? How are you, Mr. Moynihan, the leadership team at Bank of America, who also have very ambitious sustainability goals, thinking about this? What progress are you making? What more needs to be done? And what sort of evolution are you all seeing in this space?
Sure. Well, first of all, I will absolutely agree with Dr. Mackay that This needs to be driven by the top of the house. And we're very lucky to have our CEO and chairman, Brian Moynihan, as well as our vice chair, Ann Finucane, really driving the sustainability agenda, not just now, but have been doing it for over a decade. I think at Bank of America, when we think about how you can help society make progress towards its important sustainability goals, we kind of think of it in two dimensions. First, you need to understand what society's priorities are. And luckily we do. The countries of the world identified those priorities in 2015, when nearly 200 nations signed up to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And they reflect 17 categories of societal priorities that address equality of opportunity, affordable housing, prosperity, access to clean water, renewable energy, and yes, climate action, with specific goals to be met. And then, as I think Leo was referencing, what you need to do is measure progress, exactly the way that Lockheed Martin has done in their sustainability report. Because we do believe that metrics create a consistent way of measuring companies' long-term value across industries, which can help turn direct investment towards high performing and actually helps align capital to the progress in the SDGs, which we all know is so important. We firmly believe that businesses that measure sustainability impacts, integrate them into their corporate strategy exactly the way that Lockheed Martin is doing, will spot risks sooner and exploit opportunities earlier than the competition. I mean, for instance, if a market discovers in your supply chain a company that exploits its workers, your share price is going to plummet. So you need to identify that first. And on the positive side, research shows unequivocally that companies that focus on ESG priorities are much less likely to fail than companies that do not. So as you talked about, one of the efforts that we're involved with under the leadership of our CEO, Brian Moynihan, who also serves as the chair of the council, is the creation of what we call the stakeholder capitalism metrics. And these are a set of universal environmental, social, and governance metrics and disclosures that are deliberately drawn from existing voluntary standards like the ones that Dr. Mackay used as the basis for their report. They were published by the World Economic Forum and its International Business Council in September of 2020. And the idea is to help corporations measure the long-term enterprise value for investors and other stakeholders and to align their business strategies with outcomes that are sustainable for the economy, for the society, and the planet. So in collaboration with Deloitte, EY, KPMG, and PwC, the forum curated a set of 21 core and 34 expanded metrics across 4 pillars of people, planet, prosperity, and principles of governance that are considered to be the most critical for business and society. And what they're intended to do is to compare, exactly like Dr. Mackay said, a company's ESG performance consistently on a baseline level across sectors and across geographies in exactly what investors have been calling for. So we're building on the excellent work of SASB, GRI, TCFD, CDP, CDSP, and others to identify these core metrics. And I think what they really do is what they provide is a simplified and streamlined convergence of existing ESG standards, frameworks, and principles that drive comparability and make us all accountable to our stakeholders. And also what it really helps do is provide a unified public sector voice to support the efforts around what's turning into be a global solution for non-financial reporting. We know that Europe and even the US with the SEC are looking at codifying non-financial reporting. So what this initiative does is give the private companies, the issuer, a seat at the table to help influence that. Since January, around 80 international companies have adopted the metrics. That's over 7 million employees, more than $4.3 trillion in market capitalization. And this collaboration has really helped, like I said, not only provide a great set of baseline metrics that all can report on, but is really giving voice to the private sector community and helping determine what is important to stakeholders going forward. So we'd love, Dr. Mackay, I know you just came out with your report, but as soon as you're ready to join this effort, we'd love to have you on board as well.
Joe, thank you. Leo, I don't know if you want to respond to that, but also I'd love to, Deborah, to bring you in and maybe talk a little bit from your perspective leading the Council on Competitiveness and this concept that Leo brought around integrating these sustainability concepts at the core and really elevating to the CEO and then reflecting on, I think, what Leo and Joe have explicitly said. It has to be driven from the top down if we're going to see systemic change. But Leo and Deborah, I don't know if you wanted to bounce off of Joe.
No, I thought Joe said it well, and I think I think there's a good deal of convergence in practice now that's emerging among large companies that are international, have a certain set of complex risks, and also share stakeholders, particularly investors and others that are driving this agenda. One of the things I like to think is, this is it's a hallmark of just good, sound, and solid management, in that it doesn't surprise me when you correlate leading companies in ESG and then leading sector performance and industry-wide performance. It's a hallmark of good, sound management, good risk management, and preservation of shareholder value. I will say just one other thing. I think it's extraordinarily important that these topics are being addressed by for-profit enterprises. The discipline that comes with allocation of capital and having to return a market attractive return to shareholders is just a discipline and an efficiency that that helps those situated firms do a good job in these tasks. Not saying that 501c3s or the nonprofit sector aren't good, but I think there is there's an orchestra, a symphony, if you will, and you play certain roles. And along those lines, I will tell you, there have been times when we have had specific nonprofit groups that have spurred us to action in very selective silos because they're the experts there, and they challenge us and help us make better outcomes.
Thank you, Leo. Deborah, any reactions? And then I'd love to open up to Karl and Al and maybe pivot the conversation a little bit.
Well, I would want to build on both Leo and Joe, what they've said about the importance of taking sustainability, not just as a imperative for business, but as a way to drive productivity and create new value that didn't exist before. And there are other interesting examples in the history of in industrial innovation. We can look back to the total quality movement, where we had a situation in US industry where we were losing many of our strategic industries to Japan, and quality was something that was not embedded into the fabric of building and doing businesses. That was transformed, and today, the quality metric is really just a cost of doing business. Similarly, if you think about the resiliency challenges, and the council did so much groundbreaking thought leadership really after 9/11, looking at the new security environment, not just as a cost of doing business, but how could security and resiliency be built into all operations from the top down through all business units and stakeholders and supply chains to ensure resiliency as a sustainable outcome, no matter what's going to happen. And then the innovation that enables that. And of course, we've seen just recently, with the Colonial Pipeline incident and the cyber tech, not treating cybersecurity as we need to treat other key enterprise risks has grave repercussions. So there's a lot of both structural similarity, but what's really different, I think, here, and both Leo and Joe have highlighted this so powerfully, is that sustainability writ large really is related to social prosperity, to national security, as well as executing a great brand, a great business that satisfies customers and also satisfies shareholders.
Deborah, thank you for that perspective. And I know that the work that obviously you helped to lead with our Chairman Emeritus and our former Chairman, Chad Holliday, around this resiliency movement has had a lot of impact across our membership. And it's great to see this evolution of the sustainability space. And Karl and Al, I'd like to turn to you, one, to get any thoughts you might have on the conversation so far. But I'd also like to open up and shift a bit, and have you play the instrument you play in the symphony that Leo described. You both lead and help lead incredible research organizations, School of Engineering, number 9 in the country, I see, Al, the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, crown jewels in our nation's innovation ecosystem. As you look across your enterprises, what are the challenges you see to harness American innovation to meet the need, as Deborah described, not only decarbonization in the United States, but at every scale, every industry across the world. Where is more investment needed? Is this about technology? Is it about people? Is it both? Karl, do you want to go first?
Sure. Well, first, I just want to go back to something I heard that Dr. Mackay said that I found very, very interesting, and that was about stakeholders. And I like to think of scientists as the stakeholders in this innovation ecosystem. We are producing some of the most outstanding science and technology, doing the research, development, and deployment that really then moves up into the enterprise that is the American economy. And we're proud of that fact. And we also don't always look at it with the same sort of viewpoint that those in industry do. And so I think that, you know, if we have startups that are breaking off and going off and doing great things, very often they're very small and they don't even have an ecosystem in which to go to think about these particular metrics and how to think about things. So I think that it's tremendous and something that we need to really spend some time instructing and teaching our staff and our scientists about. But then I'll go back to the question about where the national laboratories play within this innovation ecosystem and how we're working towards sustainability. There are 17 national labs in the United States employing over 70,000 researchers, scientists, administrators, administrative staff, and we are working to solve the most complex problems for the nation. And those complex problems are very much focused these days around sustainability. And so we are working very hard in areas such as carbon capture, climate modeling, developing new batteries, developing very low carbon materials, trying to transform the way that we do manufacturing. And these are all very open research questions too. So if we want to be decarbonizing by 2050 and getting the carbon out of our economy, we have solutions that will take us 80% of the way there. And of course, we should be deploying in a very direct way and really following carefully what we're doing in terms of metricizing everything from environmental equality to social justice. But there's another 20% that still needs to be worked upon. And we need to be investing today to continue that type of work that goes on at our national laboratories, in academia, and in industry. We do that in a number of ways at the national laboratories. We have user facilities where we have over 35,000 scientists a year coming and using these crown jewels of large beamlines to neutron sources to electron microscope facilities, things that you can't get anywhere else. And that basically, you know, we are the only place in the world that can do some of these experiments. But we need to continue to build in that area. We need to continue to build our workforce. Al, I'm sure will talk about the STEM development that we need to be able to bring the innovators into places like the national laboratories where they can work in an innovative workplace. So I'll throw that over to you, Al, if you'd like to take it from there.
Karl, thank you very, very much. I really appreciate that. And I do want to thank Dr. Mackay for a spectacular set of opening statements. And Joe, thank you as well. So I want to pick up on a theme that everyone has touched, but I want to state explicitly. I think from the point of view of academia, we are at a unique place because finally we have a universally held holistic view to the issues. So it's not just tech, it's not just money, it's not just people's behavior, but it's how all those things interact. And I think all the speakers have touched on this in one way or another. In a large school of engineering, we're the largest school of engineering on the West Coast, 9,200 students, but we're still highly ranked because we go for quality at scale. We like to think of the burgeoning need for a new kind of graduate called the innovation workforce. Innovation, and especially innovation for sustainable technologies, has got to be at the core of the educational mission. And if you look at this, I think, holistic view of merging changes in human behavior with changes in tech and changes in investment and other strategies, I think, let me just finish on this thought and then I'll kick it back for additional questions. I want to raise this thought. We're seeing a new era of unprecedented communication capacity. Now, we know that has got to be harnessed to further drive the sensors, controls, and efficiency gains that we're driving throughout entire logistical supply chains, the agricultural industry, for one example. But there is interesting research, valuable research done both in the national labs and in academia that are looking at new sources of materials for those logistical supply chains. And those sources themselves are incredibly green, incredibly sustainable. By taking carbon out of the economy, by not putting it in the first place, it's a very powerful gambit. And Karl's already mentioned about some of the energy efficient methods. I do also believe you're going to see a revolution in bioengineering for organically produced materials of wider varieties. And I'll just end on saying the consumer has got to really understand the value here as well. But the consumer has not yet been mentioned, and that person has got to see the value, because the B2B enterprises will be able to move quickly in this direction. The B2Cs may see resistance. And I'll just close on this thought. It came from the national labs, the idea of Energy Star for appliances. I wonder, as a way to tease Karl just a little bit, is it time for there to be a new approach called Sustainability Star, which might be a way to drive consumer behavior? Because when the consumer understands the long-term costs of buying something that is not energy efficient or supports the sustainability effort, the marketplace has shown they do respond. So thanks for the opportunity to make some comments.
Al, I really appreciate that. And you actually foreshadowed one of my closing questions. So I'm going to bring it up front, and I'd like to have everyone chime in. And it's really about this consumption point. When we think about the circular mindset toward carbon use and associated products, it can't just be about production. It has to be about conscious consumption, conscious consuming to not waste resources. So Al, you touched upon a little bit, maybe go deeper, but I'd love to hear from Leo, Joe, Karl, and Deborah. What are some of the specific steps we can take to educate our workforce, the consumer, students, really everyone, on the importance of this transition to a more circular economy, and what role can things like metrics and standards play in helping in that education front? The Sustainability Star concept, Al, is brilliant, because when we look at Energy Star, there was a tremendous communication and education campaign that now permeates the industrial enterprise. So I'd love to hear from the panel on that. If anyone wants to just jump in, go ahead.
So I'll just quickly offer that if academia could be seen as your future consumer market, in other words, the people who are in college are going to grow into the economy and become the next wave of consumers. 3 observations. 1, they're predisposed to move in this direction already. 2, they're clamoring to know more. And 3, they're looking for someone to spotlight a way. So for the lucky few that can work in technologies or other parts of the university, social sciences, where they can get a glimpse, that's great. But I think I do want to leverage the point you made there, Chad, about the need for maybe an education campaign or something to really bring this into the, in a focused way, into the consumer and future consumers' eye.
Thank you, Al.
I'll just add, if I can, Chad.
Please.
I think that absolutely right. You're talking about education campaign, and that's hugely important. But in some ways, I kind of think we're already there. I mean, at Bank of America, we have 220,000 employees, representing all generations, all geographic areas. And, we hear from them every single day how important our commitment to sustainability is. I don't think we could get people to work for us if we didn't commit to sustainability. While I agree that the more we can educate the populace on how important it is for us to sort of embrace sustainability things, in many ways, I think they're kind of ahead of us. At least we're seeing that here with our own workforce.
So Al, you're saying that we need to have some sort of catalyst, some way to lower the energy to have sustainable action. And I think the idea of something like a sustainability moonshot is tremendous, because we need to be driving through the S&T pipeline all the way to market ways that sustainability can become part of our everyday life. And if we can do that, we lower the barrier to getting into being part of that sustainable marketplace. And then we are able to permeate it out, and it becomes something that's ingrained. And as Al noted, the students want to do it, but they want to know about ways to do it. And so that is still going to take a lot of research, development, and deployment on the back end.
Karl, you raise an interesting point around the sustainability moonshot. When we look at many of the, everyone has a list of like their technologies they think are going to be critical in this space. McKinsey has a list of 9: carbon capture, sequestration, transition to hydrogen, you name it. A lot of these deep, tough technologies, however, require a different investment portfolio, a different investment strategy than, say, the app economy. And Joe, maybe you could weigh in here. I'd also love to hear from Leo, given Lockheed Martin's really deep bench of suppliers, large companies, but also small and medium-sized firms. How do we overcome, and Deborah's gonna, I know she doesn't like this phrase, but the valley of death. We have to develop and deploy at scale these deep, tough technologies to solve these sustainability issues. How do we do that? Joe, obviously that's the heart of what Bank of America is thinking about today.
No, definitely. I mean, listen, the private sector, especially the financial services market, accepts that we have a critical role in driving to figure out these solutions. There's a lot of ways we do it. We have a $1 trillion environmental business initiative that we're going to mobilize $1 trillion by 2030 in financing. That's green bond issuance. That's helping our clients issue. But one interesting and innovative way I think that we capital to exactly the things that are being talked about here is emerging carbon offsets market. I mean, as Dr. Mackay knows, a lot of companies and entities are coming up with net zero targets by 2050. Well, they're not going to be able to get there all the way with just reducing their energy footprint by installing solar, purchasing energy. They're going to have to purchase what we call carbon offsets, which are kind of that last mile. So that right now, the only way to sort of purchase those are through, planting trees, preserving trees, sort of reforestation. But if you come up with a way to sort of pool all that offset money into funds that could support technologies and research that may not be profitable in the short term, but being funded through offsets could really help be a game changer. I think that's an incredibly innovative pool of ready capital that more and more companies are going to have to apply to reach their own sustainability net zero goals that could be used for exactly the kind of initiatives that Al and Karl are talking about.
Yeah, let me just follow up
please, Leo,
with a couple of things. First of all, I think it might have been Al that talked about an ecosphere, and he's exactly right. One of the things that Lockheed Martin has seen fit to do is we have a venture capital company, Lockheed Martin Ventures. I'm one of 5 directors. I serve also on the investment committee. The board is the investment committee for the firm. And I was astounded when I took a trip out to the West Coast and actually talked to some of the entrepreneurs, talked to some of the investors, and realized that the one thing that you really don't need to play is money. Money is sort of cheap and plentiful. What you need are hard problems, clean data sets, innovative people, because iron sharpens iron. And so, we have those in surplus at Lockheed Martin. We have lots of hard problems we're working on. Many of them in telecommunications and space, quantum computing, automation technologies across the board. And so, we had the currency, and it's been an extraordinarily rewarding, personally for me to be involved in these new ventures, because you talk about moonshots. The thing that's incredible about these entrepreneurs and their ideas, they're not trying to make 20% improvement. It's an order of magnitude. It's 2 orders of magnitude. It's size, weight, power, and some of the things that are being done in battery technology, again, in telecommunications and computing are just eye-watering. And so, we're in that, and then the academic infrastructure, national labs, those are other places where innovation flourishes, and very close connections to the entrepreneurial and venture community. Another concept I'd like to highlight or that we're working on and thinking about at Lockheed Martin is circularity. Because if the moonshot and ventures are, the big, kind of sexy thing to look at, the tough work is going to be done in circularity. And, we have a business model with our government customer where when we produce systems, we have to specify from the development stage to retirement. And so we have a natural inclination to think in terms of life cycle thinking, life cycle assessment. And we work very hard to perfect that. I think when we get to the second wave of issues, it's great for BlackRock and others to be pushing people to net zero, and that's great. But if you've been, sort of furrowing this row for a while, you understand that there's that 15 to 18% that's out there to get to zero at 2050. Creative arrangements on offsets is one. Original research and innovation is going to be another key, to close that gap. So I think it's a tremendously exciting time, and I think it's going to be powered by innovation, and in the ways that I've described, and in the ways that some of the others have described. I know Lockheed Martin is going to be involved. I know our national labs will be involved, and we're at the beginning, not the end of this process.
Thank you, Leo. Any other reactions? Deborah, Karl. I also know we're beginning to have a few questions pop up. Folks, please do submit questions. We'll try to integrate those in, but didn't know if there are any immediate reactions to what you've heard from Al, Joe, and Leo.
I do have one of the questions.
Yeah.
Rick Parker asked
Yes.
About
The former CEO of Rolls-Royce.
Yes. How we react when we're in a country where behaviors differ from ones that are prevalent or ones we've talked about today. And it's sort of a two-pronged answer. In one sense, when Lockheed Martin is active on the global stage, when we're outside the United States, we are a partner of the US government. If you know anything about the security industry and how technology or products or services are transferred, we're explicitly controlled by the federal government, both the executive branch, but also the legislative branch. And in that way, we cooperate very closely, and our technologies and technology base is controlled by, as a tool of foreign policy, by the United States. We don't market to customers. We certainly don't transfer anything without an explicit license from the United States. So, we play inside that box. But Rick asked a different question about when we find ourselves in a country that does not share and embrace our sustainability vision. And he nominates three options: you pull out, use your economic clout to persuade, or just set a fine example. And I think the one that we do most often and most actively is actually B, is that we do work with our suppliers and our supply chain. In fact, we have a supplier code of conduct, and so that is a norming function in our international interactions. We also spend a great deal of time on supply chain mentoring, in that we offer the opportunity to leverage tools and techniques that we have. We have one-to-one formats where we will mentor members of our supply chain, and also one-to-many training that we give to our supply chain. And then, of course, we work explicitly and robustly to make good on the protocols and laws that the government lays down for conflict minerals, human trafficking, and other things that are just no-go zones where, I will tell you, we work very hard to observe not just the letter, but also the spirit of the law with respect to those things. So that's how I would answer that question, Rick.
Thank you, Leo. You raise in answering Rick's great question, so thank you, Rick. Both implicitly and explicitly, the power of partnerships, whether it's with the US government or with mentoring customers, suppliers. I wonder if the group could maybe talk a little bit about the future of partnerships in the sustainability space. What kind of partnerships are we going to need more of going forward to meet these audacious goals that the public's clamoring for, companies are trying to meet? We're not going to be able to do it on our own. So what are you, from your various perspectives, seeing the partnership opportunity? Al, I don't know if you want to go first.
Sure, happy to do it. Chad, I just want to offer that the research prowess of academia cannot be properly brought to bear unless we have the right partnerships with our industry and venture capital community friends, because we know that if you don't have the right focus to the research project, then the outcomes are either very distant in time or not coming. So it's very important to conduct curiosity and driven research. There's no problem with that. That sets a foundation. But if you don't have the use-inspired research, then it's very hard to shape your research program so that they do generate positive outcomes. And the use-inspired is the tough one, right? That's the one where you have to look much further. You have to get your head out of the book and look way out there into the actual market and other parts of the ecosystem. So industry partnerships with academia, venture capital partnerships with academia, we're looking for more and more of these, because that tells you where the gold is at the end of the rainbow. We'll explore the rainbow for you, but we got to know which rainbow to trace.
And I'll add a little bit to that. At the national labs, we actually pride ourselves on going from the fundamental research to the applied research. But sometimes we still have to find that engine for disruption. And I think that that's where working with industry and working with venture capitalists will give us a pathway towards being more disruptive in our technologies that we're developing. And I, for one, believe that it's going to take some very disruptive technologies to get us that last mile. Should it be to decarbonization or to any other goal that we have in terms of sustainability.
Thank you, Karl. I don't know if there's any other reaction. There's a couple of other interesting questions in the chat, one of which actually is linked to this conversation. It comes from our colleague, Roberto Alvarez, the executive director of our Global Federation of Competitiveness Councils. And Roberto is talking about the costs that come with any sort of major transition. Any thoughts from the panel on how do we support small, medium-sized firms to access the capital and the experience and the expertise that you all are mentioning that are going to be necessary for this evolution and this transformation of the sustainability space? You know, Joe, you mentioned some innovative models. Are there specific things that you are seeing either at Bank of America or within the financial community at large to sort of help bridge this gap?
Yeah, no, I think it's a hugely important question because, you know, as Dr. Mackay referenced, you know, there are a lot of commitments being made to be net zero by 2050. And there is a percentage of that's going to take a lot of innovation. I mean, we as a financial institution have joined something called the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero. It's over 160 financial institutions worth more than $70 trillion in assets that have committed to being net zero across their portfolios by 2050. So that means all our clients, all our customers, all our supply chains need to meet that goal for us to meet our goal. And a lot of them are making their own goals as well. So what we need to do is we need to continue to engage them because we have given a lot of thought. We're carbon neutral already, which very clearly is easier for a bank than it is for a company like Lockheed Martin. But we've got a lot of experience in getting there. I think we need to bring our full balance sheet to the task. We need to bring our advisory capabilities to the task. We need to consistently work with our clients that are making that journey. And to go back to sort of what Dr. Mackay referenced in the question from Rick Parker, I mean, we constantly get hit with questions on whether we should divest entirely from high emitting industries. And we don't think that's the case. I think we need to continually engage with them, make sure they have a credible path to get beyond sort of where they are now. And there are a lot of good actors in all these high emitting space that want to get there. And that's where metrics come in. So you can show that companies are actually making progress, because we think engagement is by far with all our clients and our customers a better path than divestment or sort of leaving them behind, because then you won't get the progress that you need across industries and globally.
Thank you, Joe. Quick time check. We have a few minutes left. I want to save time to turn to Leo and Deborah for any final reflection, but Al and Karl, based on what you either heard from Joe or any other issues that you think you want to bring to the fore before we come to conclusion that you think are critical as we pursue the sustainability mission and innovate?
I'll just briefly state that I want to triple emphasize Joe's comment about engagement. Academia is ready to engage. We constantly seek industry partners. Industry is looking to engage. So I'm a very optimistic, hopeful guy. The spiral of engagement is increasing, and as long as we stay on that track, we're going to be getting in the right spot.
And I want to drive home the points of partnerships again. Partnering with, in my case, the national laboratories and the capabilities that we have, which we really define as having world-class experts in the field, instrumentation that you can find nowhere else, and mission-ready facilities to do things that no one else can do, is really a crown jewel for the nation. And I think that the more we take advantage of this across partnering with industry, we've done it a lot with academia, and finding new modes by which to do this, I think are really going to bring us towards that sustainability goal.
Karl, that's a really important point, pointing out the shared national innovation infrastructure that exists in our labs that can be deployed for the sustainability mission. So that'll be a future conversation, but there's a lot to dig in there. Leo, any final remark? And then Deborah, I'll turn to you for a final remark, and then just some concluding points for myself.
I'll just, I'll do this as a lead-in to Deborah's remarks, is she introduced a word and a concept early that, is a real framework for us. And it's been a big part of helping us think through sustainability as a very broad topic, and that's resilience. A couple of years ago, Lockheed Martin had its centenary, and we'd like to be here for another 100 years. And we'd like to be here in a certain way as a leading company in our sector that lives up to the best aspirations of American industry in terms of innovation, but also in return in terms of circularity and contributing to the triple bottom line. And so I think that's one of the more useful frameworks and ways to think about this is as resilience, as building in robustness, is building in cost efficiency and productivity, and all of those things find outlets in a sustainability focus, and we like to conceive of it as our real key to risk management. So that's how I would sum things up.
Leo, thank you. Deborah, any concluding thoughts or reflections?
Well, I want obviously to thank our fabulous panel and all the contributions they've made, but this discussion has really brought into my mind a few really critical forward issues that I hope we can all begin to address and come together around. And it's really, as we come out of the global pandemic, in the early stages, we focused on the body and our health. And as we navigated through this, we realized that the trifecta is mind, body, and soul. And I think, going forward, when we look at competitiveness, and the three pillars that the council has articulated for a long time have been our innovation capacity, our sustainability, and resiliency. And as Leo said, sustainability writ large, the continuity, the ability to grow and change and add value over time and be sustainable. And so as an archaeologist and ancient historian, I thought I'd enter into our conversation the Aristotelian concept of eudaimonia, which is the condition of human flourishing. That is a good in itself, it's not an end to a means. The condition of human good flourishing is the ultimate example of what it means to be a human being. And sustainability is very much part of that. And again, this came home so starkly during the pandemic that in our country, we have cities, we have communities, we have families that are not flourishing. And in order to reach that point of what I now think really almost is sustainable competitiveness, we have to address these issues as well in the understanding of what sustainability means. Because at the end of the day, if we don't have flourishing, thriving communities, they may be prosperous, but not necessarily flourishing, we aren't going to achieve our ultimate goal of delivering prosperity and security. And as Aristotle says, eudaimonia to not only every citizen in our country, but in the world. And so as we look forward to the next phase of our National Commission on Innovation and Competitiveness Frontiers, the sustainability imperative is going to cut across all of the work we do. We're very excited about bringing what we've heard today, the metrics, the best practices, the standards into that. But also we're going to see a renewed focus from the U.S. Council on Competitiveness of the regions of our country, ensuring that we have both equity and sustainability in our communities and cities around the country that will help achieve this very, very powerful concept by a great early scientist, Aristotle, of eudaimonia.
Deborah, thank you. I want to thank the rest of our panel, Al, Karl, Joe, Dr. Mackay, Leo, thank you very much. And thank Lockheed Martin for your sponsorship and support. And I want to thank all of our participants. And I apologize we didn't get to every question, but we'll look for that for the next time. First, just a few concluding remarks. To learn more about the Council and the National Commission that Deborah just mentioned, you'll see a slide up on the screen. Check out our report, Competing in the Next Economy. You can also find a link here to Lockheed Martin's latest sustainability report. You can download Propelled by Principal online. The URL is there. And then in a conclusion, this is the first conversation in the series with Lockheed Martin. Please join us next month. Our second webinar will focus on the future of advanced manufacturing. More details to come. Feel free to reach out to me, but of course, we will be reaching out to you. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time. Have a good afternoon.